All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're looking at exactly how billion-dollar companies got their first 1,000 customers, and more importantly, how you can too. You know the modern giants, right? Airbnb, Stripe, Dropbox, Canva. We see their incredibly polished apps, the massive global billboards, and the seamless user experiences. But today we're skipping all that. We're going to look exclusively at the messy, unscalable, totally manual dirt paths they actually took to get those first 1,000 users. We're going to strip away that whole overnight success mythology to reveal the highly concentrated sweat equity that built them, and show you how to use those exact same manual strategies to build your own user base.
Because honestly, it's the ultimate frustrating question for any early-stage founder. How do you actually get your very first 1,000 customers? Look, if you think the answer involves some highly scalable viral launch campaign or just pouring all your limited runway into a massive Facebook ads budget, well, the evidence shows you're falling for the illusion of scale. Most public startup histories just completely skip this critical phase. You read the tech press and it's like they jump directly from "we launched in a garage" straight to "we now have 1 million users." It makes you feel like you're doing something terribly wrong if you aren't seeing instant hockey stick growth. But the reality of that 0 to 1,000 phase is radically different. It's much slower and far, far more manual than what the press leads you to believe.
To truly understand the gritty reality of early momentum, we just have to look at what Brian Chesky said about Airbnb's intense early hustle. He literally called it the worst idea that ever worked. And, I mean, why wouldn't he? This massive global hospitality brand didn't start with a sleek, perfectly coded app and incredible demand. It started because the founders literally couldn't afford their San Francisco rent. It started with 3 airbeds on an apartment floor during a crowded design conference, and 2 broke founders manually emailing super niche design blogs, just hoping a tiny handful of people would notice they even existed.
So the absolutely crucial point we need to internalize here is that acquiring those first 1,000 users is rarely a top-of-funnel branding problem. Not at all. It is a density, activation, and trust problem. The myth tells you to go broad, buy ads, cast a wide net, and automate absolutely everything from day one. But the reality? You need to find a dense pocket of true believers, manually onboard them yourself, and use a very specific niche wedge to prove your core value. Think about it this way. Having 1,000 users spread thinly across the globe who barely even log in, that's practically useless. But having 100 highly engaged users in the exact same room who absolutely depend on your product, now that is a foundation you can actually build an empire on. Your job right now isn't to reach everyone, it's to make a tiny, specific audience care deeply.
Section 1. The Product Artifact Strategy.
Let's look at how you can use a clear product artifact to compress your magic moment into mere minutes. This is literally the ultimate playbook for solo technical founders and consumer utility apps. Take Dropbox, for example. Drew Houston completely bypassed a broad, generic consumer launch. He didn't just throw a standard beta link out into the void and hope for the best. He knew his product, seamless cloud syncing, was basically invisible tech. It's incredibly hard to explain in text, so he just recorded a short, bare-bones demo video of it actually working. But he didn't stop there. He seeded this simple artifact in technically literate communities, specifically Hacker News. He even packed the demo video full of inside tech jokes and references that only that specific early adopter crowd would catch, instantly proving, I'm one of you, and my invisible product actually works like magic.
And the result of that hyper-targeted artifact? Well, that single, simple video drove their beta waitlist from roughly 5,000 to 75,000 almost overnight. 75,000. Just let that jump sink in for a second. He essentially solved the incredibly difficult first 1,000 users problem before the product was even fully available to the public. So the major takeaway here is that if your product is highly technical or the value is just hard to visualize, you don't need a massive, expensive marketing budget. You just need a single, easily shareable artifact that proves your value in minutes to a highly concentrated community.
Section 2. Founder-Assisted Activation Playbooks.
But what if your product is a little more complex to set up? If a video just isn't enough to get people over the hump, some founders literally have to roll up their sleeves and manually remove the friction themselves. Which brings us to a legendary piece of startup lore, the Collison installation. This was famously used by the founders of Stripe, Patrick and John Collison. When they were pitching fellow Y Combinator founders to try their new payment API, they didn't do the standard thing. When someone said yes, they didn't say, "Oh, great, I'll send you a link to our documentation." Nope. Instead, they said, "Right then, give me your laptop." And they would physically take the computer right out of the user's hands and integrate the API on the spot. I mean, it is incredibly unscalable, but it absolutely guarantees activation. Looking deeper into the prehistory of that timeline, Stripe's early growth loop wasn't driven by top-of-funnel brand awareness or slick marketing campaigns. It was pure manual activation with developers who were feeling acute, painful friction with legacy payment processors. Behind the scenes, the Collison brothers were essentially acting as human APIs. They were manually fulfilling instant merchant accounts in the background while frantically trying to figure out how to actually automate the back office later on. They intentionally did the hidden, painfully unscalable work to make sure those first few hundred users experienced a perfectly smooth, magical activation.
Section 3. Manual Market Density Hustle. Now, for marketplaces, the core problem isn't just user activation. It's creating a dense pocket of trust. You can't just have buyers and sellers scattered all over the map. You need them packed tightly in one specific place to create liquidity. Airbnb's timeline brilliantly illustrates how to solve that. They didn't buy national Google ads to try and cover the whole country. They stacked incredibly local hustles. The famous inflection point in 2009 happened because the founders realized bad photos were destroying trust. People were, understandably, a bit freaked out about sleeping in a stranger's house. So what do? They flew to New York, rented professional cameras, went door to door to visit their early hosts, and manually upgraded the listing photography themselves. By taking those photos, they fundamentally improved the trust signals of the entire marketplace. That single manual intervention doubled their New York revenue and honestly saved the company.
Section 4. Niche wedges and power users. Another highly proven path is to avoid abstract mass markets entirely and start directly within a highly specific, painful workflow. You absolutely do not build for everyone on day one. Notice how Canva's timeline didn't actually start with Canva. The evidence shows they didn't kick off with this grand, broad mission to democratize global creativity. That multi-billion-dollar vision came way later. First, the founders validated the massive pain of non-designers by cold-calling schools for a highly narrow, frankly unsexy product called Fusion Books, which was exclusively for making school yearbooks. Once they proved they could solve that acute friction with simple templates and drag-and-drop tools for schools, then they broadened the aperture and launched the Canva we know today, which then exploded to 750,000 users in its first year.
Notion's path proves this strategy too. Actually, their early history is a story of near failure. They weren't an overnight enterprise success. Their very first version completely stalled out. They were running out of cash, so they had to shrink back down to a tiny team of 2, sublet their San Francisco office, reset entirely in Japan, and completely rebuild the product. When they came back, they completely ignored the mass market. Instead, they relied entirely on power users, tool makers, and highly targeted product hunt launches. They let a passionate niche community build templates and grow the tool organically through enthusiastic word of mouth. By winning the absolute most demanding users first, the rest of the market naturally followed.
Section 5. Build your actionable playbook.
Okay, now that we've totally shattered the myth of the scalable launch by looking at how the giants actually did it, let's pivot to direct application and build your playbook. When we map out all these timelines, a highly repeatable pattern emerges. None of these companies started with everyone. They all started with a narrow beachhead. Early adopters, one specific city, a small batch of YC startups and niche yearbook wedge, or a tight group of power users. This cross-company pattern proves that highly concentrated interaction channels, like a college campus, a single city neighborhood, or a specific internet forum, are vastly superior to traditional broad media channels for early discovery. They provide discovery, intense context, and immediate product feedback all at exactly the same time.
So let's map this directly to you. If you're a solo technical founder building a consumer utility or a new developer tool, here is your reproducible playbook visually mapped out. First, find your product's absolute magic moment. Second, record a fast, punchy 2 to 4 minute demo highlighting exactly that moment. Seed it in one dense community where your specific early adopters already hang out. Capture that waitlist and then, and this is absolutely crucial, do not just open the floodgates to the public. Manually onboard your most motivated signups one by one. Watch exactly where they get confused and fix it before you let the next batch in. If you're building for B2B SaaS or creating workflow tools, this flowchart should be your Bible. Define your exact, highly specific ideal customer profile. Make a very targeted list of just 25 to 50 users. Then, offer incredible hands-on setup. Do the Collinson installation. Install it live for them. Do the hidden manual operations work behind the scenes to make it feel like magic, and thoroughly document every single objection. You are essentially buying incredible product insights with your own sweat equity here. Every objection they have while you're sitting next to them, that's a bug you can fix right now, long before you attempt to scale.
And finally, if you're braving the waters of building a marketplace, you absolutely must recruit your first suppliers manually and aggressively upgrade their trust signals before importing any demand.
If you bring eager buyers to an empty or untrustworthy marketplace, they will leave and they will literally never come back. Choose one tiny micro-market, manually recruit the initial supply yourself, step in and physically upgrade the listing quality, just like the Airbnb founders renting cameras and taking photos. Only when local liquidity is buzzing and trust is undeniably high do you even think about expanding to the next adjacent neighborhood.
We've seen the real timelines, the hidden, unscalable hustles, and the precise flowcharts that built the tech industry's biggest giants. And it all boils down to this counterintuitive reality. Your first 1,000 customers should feel too small, too manual, and too concentrated. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought as you go out to build your own user base. If getting your first 1,000 users feels incredibly elegant, fully automated, and perfectly mass market, what critical learning stage are you completely skipping over?